Harrisville Designs Inc, the Assembly Manual. This is for Model 36-8, 36-inch, 8 harness, 10 treadle loom kit. First thing that you should do is unpack the kit carefully. Do not discard packing material until all parts are accounted for. You will find that there is a parts list on page 2, and the parts list is labeled out for you as to how many pieces are there of each thing. Today, we're going to start with the preparation. Very first thing that you should do is check all items against the parts list. Most wooden parts have a stamped part number. Prepare all wooden parts for finishing by sanding where necessary. Most of the flat surfaces will need light sanding only, but drill holes and saw cuts may be rough and must be sanded until smooth. Parts 5A, 5B, 6C, 6D, 9A, and both beams must be sanded with particular care since roughness on them might snag the yarn during weaving. Wipe all dust from the sanded wooden parts with the soft cloth. Note: we recommend that you finish the wood with the natural oil finish we have provided, and the hardwood will, in time, develop its own attractive natural color. You may, however, use any other finish of your choice. Any finish that completely seals the wood may protect the loom very well, but it will prevent the development of a natural patina. Apply a coat of oil finish to each wooden part with a soft rag and allow the parts to stand for a half hour. Apply a second coat of finish and again allow the parts to stand for a half hour. Wipe off all excess finish with a clean cloth. Wash out rags to prevent the possibility of spontaneous combustion. Close the oil finish can tightly and either discard or store properly. Lay out the wooden parts in the order in which they appear in the parts list. They will be used in approximately this order. Before assembly, please make sure all parts are accounted for. Also, you may find it helpful to number the bags. For this model, there are 11 bags. Here is a picture to show you how we numbered our bags. Assembly. These are considered general hints. In the following steps, the wooden parts are referred to by their part numbers. During assembly, some of these stamped numbers will be obscured by other parts or by being faced downward. As an aid in identification, use the easily removed adhesive labels supplied to place part numbers in more visible locations. Since the wood is hardwood, driving some screws may be moderately difficult. To make this easier, we suggest that you lubricate the screw threads with a small amount of moist soap by rubbing the screw on a bar of soap. If the screw becomes hard to drive home, back it out of the hole and apply a bit more soap to the thread. Do not over-tighten screws so that the wood splits or thread strip. Do tighten them enough to close the space between pieces, creating a good, solid joint. Remember as you go that countersunk holes are round for screw heads and square for bolt heads. Wood is a product of nature, and it may tend to warp or bow very slightly with changes in humidity. The loom is designed, however, to accommodate this possibility without impairing its ability to weave. The next steps are going to be for the castle assembly. Number 1, place the right castle upright, 1A. and the right foot 2A together with the numbers facing each other. Use the large screwdriver to screw the pieces together with 3 1 1/4 flathead wood screws. Number 2. Similarly, attach the left castle upright 1B to the left foot 2B with 3 1 1/4 flathead screws. Start 4 1 1/4 flathead screws in the countersunk holes of each of the back castle braces, 3A and 3B. Attach the upper brace 3A to the castle uprights using the holes farthest from the feet. Be sure both feet are inside the uprights. Face the stamped part number 3A toward the feet. Drive the screws loosely. They will be tightened later. Lay the unit on the floor, backside up, and attach the lower brace, 3B, loosely to the uprights using the 4 screws already in place, and the holes next downward toward the feet. Be sure the part number 3B faces towards the feet. The 4 or 5-digit number appearing on the other edge of this piece is the loom serial number and will face up. Tighten the 8 screws attaching the back braces to the uprights. Stand the loom on its feet with the back braces away from you. The loom may not stand squarely on the feet. That is okay. The loom will be leveled later. Place a 6 9/16 inch metal rod in each of the 2 holes in the upper back brace, 3A. See the sketch on the page. Slide 8 wooden pulleys and 9 small washers alternately onto each of these rods. Make a note: to ensure smooth operation of the pulleys, rub the flat faces of the pulleys and also the metal rods with soap or candle wax. Locate 2 6 9/16 guard pins and make sure they are straight. If they are bent, straighten them with pliers or by hammering them on a flat, hard surface. Place a guard pin in each of the small holes just above the mounted pulleys. Place the upper front castle brace 4A on the castle over the guard pins and metal rods. The part number should be on the right side facing down. An assistant may be useful in lining up the holes. You may also find it helpful to put nails in the screw holes as a temporary aid in aligning the holes. See Figure 36-202. Attach this brace to the castle uprights with 4 1.5-inch screws. Place a 6 9/16 metal rod in 3 of the holes in the lower back castle brace, 3B, as shown above. Slide 8 wooden pulleys and 9 small washers alternately onto each rod. Again, you may want to soap or wax these pulleys and rods for smooth operation. Place a 6 9/16 wooden dowel, it's called a lamb stop, in each of the 2 3/8 diameter holes as shown. Place a guard pin, again checking the straightness, in the small hole near the mounted pulleys on the right. Hold the lower front castle brace, 4B, with the part number on the right facing down. Line up the holes in this brace with the 3 rods, 2 dowels, a guard pin, and attach the brace to the uprights with 4 1.5-inch screws. Next, we are moving to the warp assembly. Attach the unnumbered end of the right warp upright, 6A, to the numbered end of the warp plate, 5A, with 2 1.5-inch screws forming a right angle. See Figure 36-203. Next, attach the unnumbered end of the warp upright, 6B, to the other end of the warp plate, 5A, with 2 1.5-inch screws. Set this assembly aside and go on to the next step. The next part of the manual deals with the breast assembly. Refer to the following diagram, Figure 36-204, while assembling the breast. It is shown as you will assemble it, which is upside down from the way you will eventually attach it to the castle. In this assembly, the 2-inch screws are among the most difficult to drive home. Use soap on the screw threads and drive the screws in firmly, working downward, not sideways. Remember that it may be useful to use the removable labels to facilitate identification of parts later. Attach the unnumbered end of the right breast upright, 6C, to the right end of the breastplate, 5B, with 2 1.5-inch screws. Using soap to lubricate the 1.5-inch screws will make driving them much easier. The upright will now stand perpendicular to the work surface, its stamped part number at its top. The number 5B will face up and the 6C inward at the top. Similarly, attach the left breast upright, 6D, to the left end of the breast plate, 5B, with 2 1.5-inch screws. The 2 uprights will be parallel and both part numbers will be at the top ends of these pieces facing inward. Fasten the middle treadle block M to the middle of the floor brace, 5D, with 1 2-inch flathead screw. To do this step, the floor brace should be lying on its narrow edge with the part number 5D facing away from you and to your right, the small hole toward you. In this position, the treadle block M is installed part number down, rounded edge toward you. Complete the square breast assembly by attaching the floor brace 5D between the 2 uprights with 4 2-inch screws. Part number 5D should be near the part number 6C as shown in the diagram, and the treadle block in the floor brace will face into the square. Next step is going to be side brace assembly. Numerous bolts were used in the following steps. The head of each bolt is square. On the inside and where these bolts enter the wood, the hole is squared. Whenever you insert a bolt into the square end of the hole, line up both square areas, then tap the bolt firmly into the hole. Number 1. Put a 2.5-inch bolt through the hole nearest the part number in the upper right side brace, 7A. Put a small washer on the bolt and put the bolt through the hole in the right castle upright, 1A, just above the lower bank of the pulleys. The bolt head and the brace should be inside the castle. Add another small washer and a wing nut to the bolt. Similarly, attach the upper left side brace 7B to the inside of the left castle upright 1B. Start a 2.5-inch bolt through the hole in the right castle upright 1A, just above the right foot. From the outside in, place a small washer on the bolt. Hold brace 7C near the bolt with part number 7C next to the castle, with the pin facing outside. Slide the brace onto the bolt. Add another small washer, then slide the numbered end of one of the two 8As onto the bolt with the number facing the washer. Add another washer and hex nut. Similarly, using the same hardware, attach the lower left side brace 7D to the left castle upright. Next will be the breast assembly to side braces. Place the breast assembly in front of the castle, with the right breast upright 6C to the right, part number down. The breastplate 5B will be to the top, and all breast part numbers will face down. Attach both lower side braces to the breast uprights with 2-inch bolts, small washers, and hex nuts, as shown in the diagram figure 36-205. The heads of the bolts should be on the inside. Attach both upper side braces to the breast uprights with 2.5-inch bolts, small washers, and wing nuts. The heads of the bolts should be on the outside. The diagonal wood brace is attached to this bolt as shown in the diagram, figure 36-206. The next step is going to be the warp to castle. In the next steps, please keep in mind that the right foot is the one on the right as you stand in front of the loom and will be to your left from the back. The brand on the castle defines the left side of the loom at all times. Number 1. Face the back of the loom and place the warp assembly on the floor. So the part number of the right warp upright, 6A, is near the right foot to your left, and the number 6B is near the left foot. Attach the right warp upright to the outside and brake pedal to the inside of the right foot with a 3-inch bolt as shown in the diagram figure 36-207. The part number on the brake release should be toward the floor, and the free end should be toward the front of the loom. Attach the left warp upright to the left foot with a 2-inch bolt, 2 small washers, and a hex nut as shown. Attach one of the small wooden braces, 8B, to the outside of each warp upright with a 1.5-inch bolt, small washers, and hex nut as shown in figure 36-209. The number 8B should face in against the upright. The heads of the bolts are on the inside of the warp uprights. Attach the other end of these wooden braces to the castle by securing them under the wing nuts and one washer on the castle exterior. Place a 1 1/2 inch bolt from the inside out in each of the holes in the breast uprights just below the upper brace. Add a small washer and wing nut to each bolt. This bolt is used only when the loom is in the folded position. Practice folding the loom. Remove the wing nuts and washers from the bolts on the breast and pull the wooden braces off the bolts. The hex nuts at the castle end of the braces should be tight enough to hold the braces so that they don't drop to the floor when you let go of them. Remove wing nuts and washers from the castle end of the small braces and pull them off the bolts. Replace washers and wing nuts. Swing the breast assembly toward the castle and attach the shorter braces to the breast assembly with the washers and wing nuts on the outside of the breast uprights. Unfold the loom to its open position and continue with the next steps. Next will be leveling. Place the loom on a level surface and see if the feet are level. Loosen the 3 screws of either foot that is not level and use a hammer and block of wood to drive the foot into a level position. To protect the surface of the foot, place the block of wood on the floor and strike the block with the hammer. When the foot is level, retighten these 3 screws while holding the foot in the new position. Next will be the beater assembly. Place the reed track 9A on the work surface, with the part number to your left, facing up. Start a 2-inch screw through the countersunk hole in the right beater upright 6E and drive the screw into the hole near the part number on the reed track. The V-slot will face toward the slotted end of the beater upright. Similarly, attach the left beater upright 6F to the reed track with a 2-inch screw. Turn this assembly over and locate the race 9B. Attach the race to the reed track with 4 1.5-inch special screws. The part number of the race 9B should be against the reed track. Insert from the back side opposite the reed track, a 3-inch bolt into each of the slots in the beater uprights. Place the reed cap 9C on these bolts so the 2 V-slots face each other. The part number of the reed cap should be against the upright. Fasten the reed cap to the uprights with a small washer and wing nut on each bolt. Place the beater assembly on the loom so it rests in the pins of the lower side braces, with washers between the uprights and the side braces. The race 9B should be on the side of the beater away from the castle. The beater can be placed on the pins in either the longer or shorter slots. Treadle assembly. Locate 10 treadles, 10 shed rods, and 10 half-inch sheet metal screws. Place a treadle on your work surface with the letter T down. Insert the hooked end of a shed rod into the treadle end and fasten the holed end of the rod to the treadle with a half-inch sheet metal screw using the small screwdriver. If the hole in the shed rod does not line up with the hole in the treadle, align it by using slight finger pressure as shown in Figure 36-210. Assemble the remaining 9 shed rods to the remaining 9 treadles in the same way. Locate the 24 3/8-inch treadle rod, 8 spacers, and 2 blocks, left and right. Slide the treadle rod through the hole in the middle treadle block, M. Slide a treadle onto either end of the rod, with the shed rod on top and away from you. Similarly, slide another treadle onto the other end of the rod. Slide 2 spacers onto the rod, 1 on each end. Add the remaining 8 treadles and 6 spacers to the rod, alternating them as shown. Attach the left treadle block, L, to the floor brace, making sure the left end of the treadle rod fits into the large hole in the block. Use 2 1 1/4 inch round head screws. Similarly, attach the right treadle block, R, to the floor brace with 2 1 1/4 inch round head screws. Next will be the harness assembly. The following steps complete the assembly of one complete harness. Repeat these steps for each of the other 7 harnesses. Locate 2 wooden harness bars, 2 metal harness sides, 8 half-inch sheet metal screws, 2 screw hooks, and 2 heddle rod clips. Screw 1 heddle rod clip into each wooden harness bar in the hole centered on one of the long edges of the bar. Screw it in far enough to leave about 1 1/4 inch exposed. Do not use pliers or other tools. A coin inserted in the loop of the clip is very efficient. Screw the 2 metal sides to the pre-drilled holes in the wooden bars, making a rectangle. Note that not all holes in the metal sides require screws. Drive 2 screw hooks into 1 harness bar using the holes in the metal sides near the corner of the assembly and the pre-drilled holes in the harness bar. Be careful placing the screw hooks, which, although strong enough in place, can break getting there. To avoid breakage, screw them down only the length of the threads and do so with your fingers. Repeat this procedure 7 times to assemble the other harnesses. Holding a pack of 200 heddles, cut the string that binds them near the center eyes. Holding the 2 loose string ends, carefully unroll the bundle of heddles and lay them on a flat surface. Tie each loose end of the string to one end of 2 heddle rods. Divide the heddles into 2 equal groups, roughly 100 in each group. You may eventually want to have more heddles on some harnesses than others, but we suggest that you divide the heddles equally at this time. Carefully slide the first group onto the heddle rods. The string will keep the heddles in order. Cut the strings again and retie them to 2 more heddle rods. Slide the second group of heddles, roughly 100, onto the second pair of heddle rods. Repeat this procedure for the remaining heddles and heddle rods. Place the heddle rods with heddles in the harness using the rectangular slots in the metal sides. Using spring clips to hold the rods in place, move 1/2 of the heddles to each side of the harness and lift the heddle rod onto the clip in the center of the harness. In this manner, put a group of heddles onto each harness. Make a note, the ends of each heddle are different. If you are right-handed, you may want the heddle eyes to open on the right. If so, the heddle ends with slight bends should be at the top of the harness near the screw hooks. lamb and harness installation. See Figure 36-213 for the next steps. Remember that as you work from the back of the loom, the left side of the loom is to your right. The castle with the brand is always the left castle. You may also want to release the warp braces from the castle and lower the warp assembly out of your way as you proceed with the following steps. Part 1. Locate the following items for one complete lamb to harness assembly. One complete harness, one length of cable, one adjustment chain, no clips on the ends of that chain, 2 S-hooks, one lamb cable, one lamb, and 10 screw eyes. Drive 10 screw eyes into the small holes along the edge of each lamb. Screw them down only the length of the threads, and in such a way that all eyes are parallel to the length of the lamb. Make a note, use soap on the threads of the screws to save your fingers. Drive 2 screw eyes into the small holes at each end of the other edge of the lamb. Using the thin end of the black hex wrench provided, bend open just these 2 screw eyes slightly so that the lamb cable can slip onto them in a later step. Working from the back of the loom, push the middle loop of a lamb cable over the guard pin and under the pulley farthest to your left, and up between the pulley and the castle. Pull that loop up approximately 12 inches. Pull the longer end of the cable across the loom and over the left front pulley to your right. Let the center loop then hang over the pulley and in toward the center of the loom. Holding the lamb with the 2 screw eyes up and the 10 eyes down, slip the loops at the ends of the lamb cable over the screw eyes that you open slightly, as shown in the diagram that follows. Loop a length of black cable around the upper front pulleys and allow the ends to hang free as shown in the following diagram, figure 36-215. Note that the leather is positioned beneath the guard pins. Put an S-hook at each end of the adjustment chain and keep this assembly right beside you for the next step. The next step should be reviewed carefully before starting, and you may want to refer back to the diagram of the lamb and cable assembly used earlier. You may also want assistance while hanging the harness. Still working from the back of the loom, hook the right end of a harness in the loop in the long end of leather, supporting the harness so as not to pull the leather out of its pulley on your left. Put the left hook in the eye on the short end of the leather. Now, holding the leather above the loose copper collar, put one of the S-hooks on the adjustment chain through the loop in the leather below the collar. Then, pick up the lamb cable loop and hook the lower S-hook of the chain into that loop. Check to make sure that the leather and lamb cable are riding on the front pulleys in all locations. Again, the front pulleys are those farthest away from you when you are working at the back of the loom. Level the harness by loosening the copper collar and adjusting the leather loop as necessary. Slide the copper collar down as far as it will go toward the S-hook. This will bind the leather and hold the harness in a level position. Do not squeeze this collar with pliers to clamp it, as you may have to readjust the harness after the loom has been used for a time. The adjustment chain is to allow adjustment of the height of the harness. The S-hook should fit into the proper link so that the top of the upper harness bar is about 9 inches from the top of the loom. Check for smoothness of operation by pressing the lam down. This action should fit the harness smoothly and evenly. Attach a second harness assembly using the same procedure as for the first. Install the next 6 lam and harness assemblies in a fashion similar to the second, working successively to the back of the loom. The next session is treadles to lams. Locate several snap chains and snap at least one to each shed rod on the treadles. Lift each treadle and snap the other end of the snap chain into any eye above that treadle. Do not hook more than 4 treadles to any one lam at this time, as the weight of the treadles on the lam will tend to pull the harness up. The next thing will be beam installation. Place a large washer on the ratchet gear end of the cloth beam. Place this end of the beam through the large hole in the upper right side brace. Place a small washer between the other end of the beam and the upper left side brace and secure this end of the beam with a 3-inch screw through the hole in the side brace. Leave it loose so that the beam turns freely. Attach the pawl to the upper right side brace with a large sheet metal screw. Using the hole near the ratchet, place a small washer between the pawl and the brace. The tooth of the pawl should face downward, resting upon the ratchet. Leave the screw loose enough to permit the pawl to move easily. Attach the warp beam to the uprights in the same manner as the cloth beam, using the large washer between the brake drum and the upright. Secure this end of the beam with a 3-inch screw through the hole in the left warp upright. Leave loose enough to allow the beam to turn freely. The next section will deal with the warp brake assembly. Face the rear warp end of the loom. The brake assembly will be installed on the warp upright to your left. Locate the spring anchor bracket. Note that one hole is slightly smaller than the other. Put a 1/2-inch sheet metal screw through the smaller hole and attach the bracket to the warp upright, 5A, using the pilot hole about 9 inches below the warp beam. The free end of the bracket should hang straight down. Insert a 1-inch roundhead wood screw into hole B of the brake bar and through a small washer. Then pass this screw through the hole made by 2 clamps in the end of the brake cable, then through 2 small washers and into the pilot hole in the warp upright just below the brake drum, as shown in the diagram. Do not tighten this screw completely, as the brake bar must be able to rotate freely. Wind the brake cable twice around the brake drum in a clockwise direction and hold the free end of the cable in your right hand. Be sure that the cable does not overlap or cross itself at any point. With the other hand, grasp the spring of the adjusting assembly and hook the free end of the spring through the end of the brake cable. Then hook it through the small hole A in the brake bar, threading the open end of the hook toward you away from the upright. Pull down firmly on the adjusting bolt and pass it through the hole in the anchor bracket and secure with the wing nut. By adjusting this wing nut, you can increase or decrease the braking power. Tie a knot in one end of the nylon brake cord. Thread the unknotted end of the cord as follows: through brake bar hole C from the outside in, down to the brake release pedal, and through the hole near the center of the pedal. Tie a simple overhand knot in the end of the cord in such a position that the end of the pedal will be approximately 5.5 inches from the floor. When the release pedal is depressed, the brake should be off, and the warp beam will turn in either direction. This release can be adjusted changing the position of the knot at the brake pedal. When the pedal is up, the brake should be on, and the beam should turn easily in one direction only. If it can be turned backward, tighten the wing nut under the anchor bracket to increase tension on the brake. This next section deals with the final assembly. Place the reed in the beater. Bring the reed cap down so it is snug on the reed and tighten the two wing nuts. And now we're going to move on to attaching the wheels. Mount the wheels to the left castle upright with 4-inch carriage bolts, washers, and hex nuts.